Hey, everybody. It's Thursday. It's time for the Art Fight podcast. I'm Joe Nolan here in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful afternoon. It's the winter here in Tennessee, but it feels sort of like a damp early spring day, Brian. Would you agree?
It's actually the first day where I felt like some sense of possibility in the weather. So there's something to be said for that. But we got nothing, man. We got nothing. This is like we're not Florida, but winters here are fine. So for all the people that are not here, you probably got it worse than us, and we're just fine.
Yeah. I had to run outside and do a few errands today, and I was just enjoying a lovely afternoon in the winter, deep winter in Nashville. There's a link right there that we're about to share with our guests, and we're happy to welcome back for a second time in the show. Last time Sean was on our show, we said we would have him back to talk about the Conor McGregor fight. It is that time. It is that week. Last week I mentioned, especially for y'all who don't follow the fights out there, that we were about to have 3 fights in a row. We had an amazing card last Saturday night, a very fun card this past Wednesday, like at breakfast time. It was kind of weird. But this Saturday night, Conor McGregor will fight Dustin Poirier, and our good friend from Severe MMA, Sean Sheehan, is with us. Good to see you, Sean.
Hello, lads. How are you? Nice to be back. In the Happy New Year as well. Are we still allowed to say Happy New Year? We're 21 days into January now.
I do. I say Happy New Year the entire month of January.
I like that. I like that.
Well, we've already had about 2 years in the first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Time is an abstract concept at this point. Just make whatever you want it to be, man. Just be with it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the best. I think it's the best way to do it. Like the last year has just been utterly crazy in every sort of way. I think obviously with the coronavirus and with everything like that. So we're just like in a waiting pattern. It seems at the moment. Like, can this vaccine get going, and can we get back to some sort of like here in Ireland? There's no shops open or anything. Like you can get food, you can get your groceries and things, but there's no. If you want to buy a pair of shoes, you can't do it. If you want to go buy clothes, you can't buy it. Nothing is open.
Meanwhile, here in Nashville, if you want to get wasted with a bunch of bachelorettes and pedal around on a pedal tavern and scream obscenities and act crazy and go to any bar or whatever you want, man, it's all right here in Nashville, Tennessee for you.
I'm on my way.
I'm on my way.
It is quite. You really have to live in an alternate universe, parallel reality at times. But yeah, it's surreal, man. It's surreal times. But I do think about this sometimes, and when you think about what it is for a fighter to go through a camp with, like, when I get to this, you start to understand Max and his cupcakes or whatever. When we have been sort of in this year-long sort of hiding and training, and everybody's going through and improving what they're doing and improving their craft and all of that, waiting for this kind of reveal or this time where we can step out into it and kind of do the new thing. And I feel like in a way it's like we've been in the worst collective fight camp ever.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, except we put on weight instead of lost weight. That's the only problem.
Exactly. Somebody is this one of your relatives, Sean? Patrick Sheehan,
my brother, unfortunately.
Okay, he's reminding Sean he doesn't have anything to worry about because he has plenty cans of harp to get him through the longest winter, the longest pandemic. It's gonna be fine. Is harp your brand?
Yeah, I love harp. It's it's what everyone used to drink like in Ireland in the 80s, and I'm the only one left drinking it still, me and a couple of other hard lads. I haven't had a drink yet this year though, so I've just been too sick to drink basically. But I might have on this Saturday night now watching the fights.
Yeah, you should. That would be great. I would be happy for you to be back on the men and able to have a delicious harp. Do you drink that harp at room temperature, or do you drink it chilled?
Oh, no. I drink it chilled. But one of my friends actually, well, I met him in college. The first time I ever met, was it Harpy yet? Or maybe it was Foster's, I think. But he came into my apartment where we were having like some party or something, and he had like 12 cans, and he just laid them up on the table and just drank them from the table for like 6 hours. I'm like, I'm friends with you now and we're still friends, like fucking 14 years, 15 years later. I was like, I knew from that moment that was it. So
this is we're bonded in our blood.
Yeah,
the reason The reason we wanted to have you back, Sean, is you're coming to us today straight out of Limerick, Ireland. It's a big deal for Ireland and for Irish fight fans this week because Conor McGregor is back in the Octagon. This fight's interesting to me. I've been watching some of your coverage, especially your chat with Dan Hardy was fantastic. So I know that you've been going over some of these same questions, but this is an opportunity for you to expound a bit more than you can do when you're the person interviewing. To me, it's obviously the interesting thing about the fight is that these two guys have met before. Rematches are always fascinating for those reasons. And it's especially weird to me because both of these fighters are not the fighter they were then. They've both moved up an entire weight class. Conor McGregor's entire world is completely different now. And really so is Dustin Poirier's, but certainly Dustin Poirier's capacities as a fighter are vastly improved. And, this week I've been rewatching some of his highlights and seeing him just like dismantle Justin Gaethje, for God's sakes. It's like this guy fucking dismantled Justin Gaethje. You know what I mean? So what does this all mean? Who are these guys? Where the fuck are we? Because to me, McGregor's a question mark in many ways.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, and I suppose it is the biggest topic for discussion because of this fight. Is a rematch, obviously, and what it's 6.5 years since the first fight. If you think about anyone, any of the three of us, how much have you changed in the last 6.5 years? Like, how much has your life changed? For better or worse now for some of us. I suppose. But, if you think about it from a fighting perspective, like if you look at Dustin Poirier, I don't think anyone could argue that he isn't a better fighter today than he was back then. Even in terms of like he hasn't taken that much damage. I don't think he's that much wear and tear in his body. Still a young guy, so what he's experienced in those 6.5 years, I think, has been almost all good. Okay, he's lost a couple of fights and he's been choked out and knocked out once, I think, since the McGregor fight, if I'm not mistaken, by Michael Johnson. Or was that? I don't know, but there hasn't been much anyway. Yeah. Plus, look at McGregor. Okay, he hasn't fought as much as Poirier, but he went and he had like I think people when they look at the Conor or the Floyd Mayweather bout, they kind of throw it out a little bit. But imagine the amount of improvements McGregor made in his hands preparing for that fight. That's the thing I think we don't look at enough. Okay, maybe his ground game isn't as good because of it, because he wasn't concentrating on it for a while, but then he got the Khabib fight and he obviously concentrated on it a lot, even though maybe the preparations weren't as good. So, no, there's no doubt about it. I think both guys are better now than they were back then. The thing is McGregor, and I think Poirier is better now than he's ever been. But is McGregor better now than he's ever been? I think that's the question. And if he is, I think he'll destroy Dustin Poirier, because I think at their very best, he's the best. McGregor's the best. But if McGregor is like a little bit below, say, where he was when he fought Eddie Alvarez or Jose Aldo, when he looked absolutely unbeatable, then there be, McGregor is probably here at his best. Poirier is probably here. He'll be coming a little bit closer if McGregor isn't at his best. So that's the question for me. And I think like Poirier has some really good aspects to his game that could trouble McGregor, and obviously McGregor has as well. Poirier has been knocked out by him. McGregor as a southpaw, Michael Johnson as a southpaw before, so he struggles a little bit against southpaws. Conor McGregor lost to Nate Diaz as well as southpaw, although that was a little bit different. It wasn't down to the southpaw thing as much, I don't think. But it's a very, very interesting bout to see what both guys will change from the first fight, how different they will be, and what difference it will make in the outcome.
Yeah, I find it. I was going to say real quick, just that I think what I find most interesting about this to me is the mental position of Poirier and all this, because he is in a place where he's for so long. I mean, gosh, going back and watching what was the doc Fightland and all that back. I mean, it's just like talk about change. I mean, the guy was his progression has been this sort of slow roasted, sort of beautifully arced kind of thing. It's this amazing, whereas totally opposite to the sort of meteoric nature, or at least perceivably meteoric. If you just exclude the American audience, we didn't know about international promotions, right? We just all of a sudden saw this guy come on the scene. That's what it was for most people. But what I find most fascinating is just for Poirier's mindset. He doesn't have the animosity. He doesn't have the all the things he attributes to sort of maybe I fought emotional, which he did, that he always did. But I always kind of wonder if it's an overcorrection to all of a sudden have this sort of highly amiable, I'd have got nothing to lose. I've already even lost to this guy. Like, there's no new flavor of humiliation or anything that I'm going to suffer here. It's like, it's a good paycheck. I don't know. Like, so I just wonder if the sort of low key pressure of that is good for him or not. And then on the flip side with McGregor, it's like, man, he's dying to just actually prove to himself that he can still actually fight, because he's just barely been in there and he's just been raring to go. So I don't know. I find that just those are the polls for me, but to me, it's 100% mental. This whole matchup to me is a strange, the polarity is not too hot. It's just this thing. It's a very interesting mental outlook.
Yeah, I'm not a big one for looking into the mentality of fights, to be honest. I would much rather look at tactics and the technique. But with McGregor and Poirier, you can't divide it just because of what happened in the first fight. And, the famous pictures of McGregor looking at the embedded with Poirier getting mad at him. And to be honest, what you were saying there about Poirier maybe being changed and having nothing to lose coming into this fight, so it mightn't affect him as much mentally. I was along the same lines until maybe 2 weeks ago. And then you look around and you see where's Poirier done any interviews, where and he did one, I think, with my boy Hunter Hamastek, and he's done one or two this week as well, with the UFC, obviously having him in the hotel over in Abu Dhabi. But there hasn't been that much, and there hasn't been that much talk from him at all, when there usually would be coming into the biggest fight of his career. Plus, I saw him at the press conference today, and I don't know if you agree or not, but to me, he looked afraid of McGregor attacking him. Now, I'm not saying he looked afraid of McGregor as a fighter, or he's afraid of the fight or anything like that, but I feel like, Dan Hooker said before, I don't want to be the Jeremy Stevens saying, who the fuck is that guy?
Yeah.
It felt like Poirier didn't want to be that today. It felt like, even when McGregor he shook his hand and he was really nice to him. He didn't say one bad word to him. I'm going to knock him out, but what do you expect? But like, he was extremely cordial, and it still felt like Poirier was like, is this real? Are you going to turn on me? Is this going to happen again? And it went for the whole press conference. So that, to me, and the fact that he has been very quiet and he has said absolutely nothing, I don't know. To me, it looks like a bad sign, to be honest. And I've been really talking up Dustin Poirier. A lot of my friends and stuff, obviously, like Irish people, have been saying, McGregor knocked him out before, it's Poirier lost a babe. Is he actually that good? And I'm like, yeah, he is. He's really that good. He's fantastic striking. He hits really hard. He's good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu. Like, this could be an epic matchup. And then I'm kind of talking myself down now a little bit as well. But it's it's an interesting one. And like McGregor's mentality as well. Whereas McGregor, this week as well, and where is, he spent a year looking for a fight. It's almost exactly a year since he fought Cowboy Cerrone. He was at war with the UFC, as he mentioned himself, during this week. He really wanted to fight, and they wouldn't allow him to fight. And now he's coming back. So where's he mentally? I think those are questions for both sides, I suppose.
And I think, both of these things, especially, Dustin's state of mind, can play into the other thing that, we've heard a lot about this week. But again, it's one of those things that you kind of have to address this, because if you're going to talk about this fight, you have to talk about the idea that Conor McGregor has the best chance to win this fight in a spectacular fashion, just the way he did the last time. If Poirier comes out stiff and afraid, possibly mentally weak and worried, and Conor comes out like he came out against Cerrone, the idea is that he'll be able to do what he did the last time. He'll be able to land his biggest weapons at their freshest, and he'll crumble him and it'll be over, And the other side of that coin is, but what if he doesn't? And what if it's the second round? And now it's the third round. And what happens when Poirier finds that next gear that he definitely has? And Conor, I saw him on an interview today. I think it might have been during the press conference. Conor was saying, I think it's a myth. I think it's ridiculous. People think that about me. I had some problems with the first Diaz fight, but my cardio is not an issue. That's not a thing for me. And sooner or later, I'll have a fight where somebody will be good enough to go 5 rounds with me, and I can show everybody. But I don't know if I believe him. So is that really what it comes down to? The early thing and the late thing, and the balance between those two things between these fighters?
Maybe. I think if you're looking in a very kind of basic sort of way, look, if the fight finishes early, more than likely be McGregor, although Poirier absolutely has a chance to knock him out early if he connects. If Poirier connects with anyone in the world, he can knock him out. If it goes late, you'd probably favor Poirier because of McGregor's past problems with cardio and stuff. Now, the problem with McGregor, and talking about the cardio, like this has always kind of been a problem with McGregor's career because he's finished fights so early. We don't have that much of a set of data to show us if this is a real problem or not. I feel like McGregor, and this is based on a very small set as well, I feel like he gets tired earlier than probably he should, but he has a good second wind if he can get through it. The first Diaz fight, he got really tired and he didn't get through it. The second Diaz fight, he got really tired, but he got through it.
Yeah, he did.
The Floyd Mayweather bout, he got really tired, he got through it, and okay, he got finished in the end, but you're fighting Floyd Mayweather, so that's a little bit of a different thing. So, has he improved since that? The thing as well with McGregor is the 2 Diaz fights were at 170 pounds. His 2 Habib, and look at Habib fight as well. That was at 155. He lost the first 2 rounds and he won the 3rd round against Habib Nurmagomedov, who had dominated him for the first 2 rounds. So if you're being critical about McGregor's cardio, which I think I am, and most people probably are, and look at it as a negative point, you also have to look at things like that, him winning the 3rd round against Habib, as a positive point. Okay, he went on and he lost the 4th round. So it's an interesting one. With McGregor, everything is blown up. He's the best striker in the world. He has the worst ground game in the world. He has terrible he's awful cardio. There's nothing like, maybe someone can outbox him. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe he can out-cardio someone. Maybe not. To me, I think his cardio has probably improved over the last few years, and it will hold up a little bit better. I also think his ground game isn't as bad as people say, and he's a takedown defense as well. But if I was Poirier, and if I was in Poirier's corner, obviously he probably wouldn't listen to me because what do I know? But I'd be trying to weather the first 2 rounds, push McGregor against the cage, and bring those issues up. Maybe more mentally even than physically. Put him against the cage, tire him out, take this fight from McGregor, and then come late. If you look at Poirier as well, though, like Poirier hasn't gone that long too many times and won. Okay, 5 rounds he went against Max Holloway and looked really good, and same against Gaethje as well. But most of these fights finish inside, and Hooker, but most of his fights finish inside the first 3 or 4 rounds, especially for the last good few years. So both of these guys seem to be finishing fights early when they can. So it's definitely an interesting one.
I feel like there's a temptation there for McGregor to try to extend unnaturally to the fight his time in the cage. He keeps talking about this. I think if he presents any danger to himself, which is ultimately that's all you're fighting, especially when you're McGregor, right? Like that's going to be, but I feel like it's a real risk to entertain this notion of I'm going to alter the natural outcomes of this competition in these ways to try to control time and extend things and all that, because him leaving himself out there to then all of a sudden have an unforeseen sort of cardio drop or get caught by something. I mean, I don't know. So I feel like he knows that in his heart of hearts, like that he's got to get after it and he doesn't want to get into a slog. But I do find it interesting that if he does believe that, then that seems to be like a pathway to a potential sort of self-inflicted, sort of downfall. I feel like a basketball game is like a thing where you can sort of be like, hey, let's lay back a little bit, or let's push the pace or whatever. And I appreciate that exists in fighting as well, but there's just something about the consequences of fighting changing so quickly and so definitively that it seems like a weird thing to get in there and think, I want to make this an expose of what I've been working on and an expose of all, I want to silence the doubters. And like, to me, all of a sudden you're trying to do too many things. I would just fight the guy and then just do the best you can. But at the same time, I'm also not Conor McGregor, and I've never fought anybody in my underwear on television. So there's that.
I can tell you one thing for absolutely certain, though. Conor McGregor will not do that. He will come out there and he will try to win that fight as easy as possible. You don't get paid for overtime in MMA. You saw it against Cerrone. He said before that fight, I think I might want to get rounds in. This might be a good fight. I'm coming back. I need to get back into MMA. 2 or 3 rounds might be good. 3 seconds into the fight, he comes out and swings a big left hand trying to knock out Cerrone immediately. And 38 later, he knocks him out. So McGregor won't. That's one thing I can assure you. McGregor won't try to draw this out. He won't try to go 2 or 3 rounds. If he can finish him in the first 7 seconds, I guarantee you he will finish him in the first 7 seconds. I think it'll take a little bit longer than that, but McGregor's no fool.
Well, it's funny because I think that's, it's something to be said is when we talk about, whether he has issues with his cardio or not, it's not necessarily a thing saying, he's got some kind of, lazy training or he's got some kind of physical deficiency. It's really just a lot of it's just what do you call it? Like a side effect of the fact that he does have such an aggressive style, that he does throw that left hand with such bad intentions. It takes it out of you. He's explosive and you can't just constantly explode. You need to regroup, and that's when Nate Diaz hits you with the 1-2, and then hits you with 20 more.
Fighters like that. Vitor Belfort was a bit like that as well. He was a guy who come out and he tried to knock you out really, really quickly, and I don't like. Okay, there's probably some examples of it, but offhand, he found it very hard to adjust to that. Like he'd win all his fights early, but if it went late, he'd lose. I think McGregor has adjusted his game a little bit. Like if you follow McGregor on Instagram or Twitter or wherever, every week you see McGregor fast. And that's all. He does that a lot. He has Dr. Julian Dalby with him, who is known for getting people's cardio better, and he's been working with him for years and years and years. Mark Ramondi wrote an article about it during the week, and he's still working with him. So, like, I'm no expert in that sort of fitness, obviously, but if that wasn't working, if his numbers weren't getting better, if they weren't getting, I don't think he'd still be doing it. But the thing is as well, like, is it a physical thing or is it a mental thing? And like, if Dustin Poirier can bring out that side of it mentally in him and make it tough for him, it could absolutely rear its head again, even if physically he is way better than where he once was.
So it's clear that Conor's not on the 90-day free trial, is what you're saying. Like,
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
he's got the pro. He paid for the pro version.
He got the free pass, I think. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Is there anything that you feel like, Sean, this, like, not just that people, especially maybe more casual, maybe more American audiences or whatever, but do you feel like that, or people that are our audience where they're sort of half in, half out, or they might. We have people that listen that are deeply into all this, and we have people that listen that don't care at all and wish we would shut up about it. And we kind of like that space, right? But maybe to sort of the more fringe of the sort of this whole event and your perspective, do you feel like there's anything that's just the missing piece, or the thing that you wish people would talk about more, that you find more interesting, that is a particular angle that nobody's hitting?
I think the angle that nobody's hitting is the tactics of the fight, to be honest, because I've talked about it a lot this week. I know I spoke to Dan Hardy and I spoke to Luke Thomas as well over on our Patreon. And that to me is like, that fascinates me more than anything else. So maybe it's just me, but like, this is a high level southpaw versus another high level southpaw, something we rarely see in MMA. Now, we've lots of kind of switch stance fighters in MMA, and we see southpaw versus southpaw matches during fights a good bit at different times. But like, even let's say if it's, I don't know, Colby and someone else who's kind of, even Colby's a wrestler, but his boxing is improved. If he, say, fights a striker and they're both southpaws, it's not the same as, say, McGregor against Poirier, who are two out-and-out brilliant strikers. Okay, they're well-rounded as well, but to me, that's fascinating. I spoke to Dan Hardy about it, and he mentioned the low kicks from Poirier, and that being a big thing. Which way will Poirier circle? Will he circle into the power of McGregor because it'll give him more openings maybe, or will he circle the other way away from it? I went back and I watched the first fight between the two last night. I put up the podcast this morning on our Patreon, and I watched the Nate Diaz fight with McGregor, and I also watched Poirier versus Johnson, just to see maybe how they were beaten by other southpaws. And I think it's interesting. It was different ways about it. Like, Poirier, to me, Poirier, analysing him over the last while, not for southpaws, but for just, orthodox fighters, his jab has been really good. His ability to kind of pop into the pocket and land big power and not get hit as much. Now, he gets hit fairly often, but because he throws fairly often, he usually hits harder. That, to me, is like the best aspect of his game. He's obviously a lot wider of a game than that. But against southpaws, he doesn't really do that as much. He doesn't really jab at all. He leads with his left hand and he throws from far back a lot more. So it takes away one big aspect of his game, which is the jab. Now, those two fights lasted in a total of 2.5 minutes or something like that, so there isn't that much. But when you add to that the fact against Conor McGregor the first time for Nate Diaz, his jab was the shot that landed on McGregor over and over throughout the first round, which he lost well, but into the second round as well. And we all remember McGregor being rocked by that jab in the second round. Will Poirier look at that and say, I need to throw the jab more against McGregor? Will that lead to McGregor countering the jab and being able to hit Poirier more easily? McGregor's right hook, I think, is a very useful weapon against the southpaws. And I also think, one last point, maybe the technique and stuff, I think McGregor might come with a lot more of a kick-heavy game. In the first fight, he threw a lot of spinning kicks, a lot of high kicks as well. And I think, to go back maybe a little bit to the cardio issue, he didn't do that at 170. He threw low kicks at 170 in the second fight against Nate Diaz, but I think he didn't throw many kicks because of the worries about the cardio. Just think about it, throwing a big wheel kick, it's going to take more out of you. Even coming back down to fight Eddie Alvarez only a few months after Nate Diaz fight at 170, I still think he had those worries. If the worries about the cardio are gone, I think he might throw more kicks, and that might lead to more openings against Poirier. So those are me to look the jab of Poirier, key aspect. The kicks of McGregor, I think, a key aspect. The right hook of McGregor, I think, as well. And the leg kicks. Who can win that leg kicking battle could be a key aspect if this goes, 7-8 minutes, maybe into the third round or something like that.
Man, I appreciate your enthusiasm. You got me so stoked. I'm stoked for this fight anyway, but now I'm just like, who's going to win the leg kick battle? I don't know if I'm going to make it till Saturday. Sean, I can't tell you how much I'm so glad you were able to make it this week and to spend some time with us. If people want to find your work, where's the best place for them to look?
They can find me on Twitter at Sean Sheehan BA, as you see down there in the corner. And
well done, Brian.
The two good places as well this week. You can find lots of free stuff. An interview with Dan Hardy up on Severe MMA. And if you just search Severe MMA on YouTube, you'll find it there. And
a great interview, everybody. Go listen to that.
Yeah. Thanks very much. And we also asked loads of Irish MMA fighters and a few comedians and things as well who they think will win the fight. So that video is up there. And also there's loads of stuff on Patreon. So if you go to severemma.com/Patreon, you'll find them there. Interviewed Luke Thomas, interviewed Ariel Hilwani. I have an interview coming tomorrow with Robbie Fox, who's over there, who's a really, really funny guy from Barstool Sports. Another couple of interviews coming up. We have a betting show coming up as well on Friday. So and there's 3 or 4 other podcasts as well up there this week. So this is probably the best week. I think it costs $5. So the price of a pint, you have to stay in. You can't drink any pints. A pint of harp, exactly. So you can buy me the pint of harp this month.
Buy Sean a pint of harp. Sean, one last thing before you go. I want you to give me a pick. Hooker versus Nashville's own Michael Chandler.
I think Chandler will win by decision. I think he'll take him down a couple of times, wear him out, and win by decision.
Michael Chandler is going to see you at the top, and he's going to be hanging onto a pint of harp for you. And we're going to get you back on the show soon, Sean. Have a great fight night, and thanks again for being here with us.
No bother, lads. Thanks. Anytime. Happy New Year.
Thanks so much.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year for another 9 days.
All right.
Lovely. Awesome. Thanks very much, lads. Bye.
See you, brother.
All right, Joe.
Yeah, that was so fun. Oh man, I'm so stoked. Our friend Sean has been a little bit sick recently, and I'm so glad he was able to be on the show with us. Soon we'll be joined by another MMA journalist. Ben Kiely will be with us. So we're waiting for Ben to come on. And in the meantime, Brian, what are your thoughts about the fight that we didn't say anything about yet, or about Michael Chandler? We can talk about that if you'd like.
I think right now, Michael Chandler is so glad that he went through the whole exercise that he did already. He's such a well-trained, sort of routine-oriented fighter. So for him to have already had dress rehearsal through the whole thing, as you saw on the embedded that they did, I was like, man, this is huge. I would hate to be coming into it through the extra prism of Abu Dhabi. That's not an easy way to walk in. You know what I mean? So I feel good. I feel good for his preparation, and that's really what it's about, I think, for him. Oh, look, yeah. we've got a guest number 2. This is awesome. You ready? You ready, Ben? Look at this. Bam.
Yeah. Perfect.
Oh,
hey, Ben, what's going on, man? Yeah. So everybody,
this is
nice to meet you, man.
Go on. Nice to meet you. I'm really happy to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you on. So we basically were planning to have 3 different journalists on today. Our good friend who we've had many shows with, thank God, Chuck Mendenhall, isn't able to do it with us today, but we're glad you're able to join us, Ben. Ben, you've got the Hindsight MMA podcast. Am I saying that right?
Hindfight MMA podcast.
Hindfight. Oh God, I knew I was gonna fuck it up. That's a better name. Hindfight is better.
That was hilarious though. Then you would have you couldn't talk about the preview of any fight. You could only talk about what's happened.
Yeah. You could only do podcasts after the fight.
That's what we do though. We look at old fights, we look at like crazy fights. We don't do previews.
Oh, that's cool. So tell us a bit more about the podcast. Just let our listeners know about it.
Yeah, sure. Season 2 actually just dropped today, so you can find that on Spotify and Libsyn. Myself and a stand-up comedian who's from Carlow in Ireland, but he's based over in Austin, Texas. We go back and we look at some ridiculous fights from the past. So, for example, today we put up a podcast about Andrei Arlovski's pro debut. You know this one?
No, not really.
Okay, right. Back in 1999, he made his pro debut on M1 Global against a guy called Vyacheslav Datsik. And he was doing really well. He came in as this big hyped up prospect from the world of Sambo. And the other guy was kind of this, crazy. Well, crazy is the wrong word to use, but like a Muay Thai boxer with a wild style. And Arlovski was controlling the fight and he ended up getting knocked out with a big haymaker. And Arlovski ended up being the UFC heavyweight champion. The other guy ended up criminally insane and with paranoid schizophrenia, and he thought he was the son of the pagan god Perun and did all sorts of crazy stuff. So
yeah. I think I saw you posting about that earlier today.
Yeah, we just dropped it, so I was posting about it a lot.
Yeah, I think I saw it on Twitter. That's hilarious. Yeah, it's really interesting. We're talking about the fact that one of the big storylines about this fight is the fact that, when these fighters are so young, you don't really have a sense of what's going to happen, where they're going to go. And when you look back at that first fight between McGregor and Poirier, I mean, there is no reason at all to think that Dustin Poirier is ever going to be in the conversation for the lightweight belt. You know what I mean? And in the meantime, now with some hindsight, right? We look back and we realize this guy like completely destroyed Justin Gaethje. This guy destroyed Eddie Alvarez. Like he's done shit that you never ever would have predicted from seeing him fight at 145. When was it? 2015? Is that when that fight happened?
It feels like a long time ago. Come on, since then. Like I just think that the main takeaway from that is that neither were featherweights. I don't know how either of them made featherweight back then. I know Poirier in particular had an awful time making it, and just to see certain fighters move up and they don't make it, but Poirier really made the most of it, and McGregor did too. But I guess Poirier went through that long list of absolute killers, whereas McGregor had he kind of got thrust straight into that title shot. So in a way, Poirier is more proven at lightweight. He's been through the wars, as you said, beat Justin Gaethje, beat Eddie Alvarez, beat all these former champs, beat Max Holloway, beat Dan Hooker. Like he's been through them all. It's almost the point, like if he wins and he becomes a champion, who's he going to defend it against? Like there's not many people left.
That's a great point. I mean, like people, if he wins, people are going to have this massive snap realization that this has been happening the whole time. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's going to be a shuddering, like we were talking about, like it's just been such a weird, slow burn for him over such a long arc. I love it though when this happens for a fighter and it doesn't feel desperate in the way that maybe it did for some, where it's like, like for Rashad or somebody where you're like, wow, you can see this thing fading quick. They've got to capitalize on this shot. This is kind of going to be it for that. Like it doesn't feel like that at all, which is kind of astounding on its own.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is, while Poirier's like really proved himself, think about those fights. Like Gaethje was a war. The two Alvarez fights were wars. Dan Hooker was another war. Max Holloway was a war. Yeah. They're all wars. At some, like the chin's the first thing to go, and once that goes, like you're on the downward slide. I'd worry when that point is going to come for Poirier, because he's taken so much damage over the last few fights. It's almost like he got off a bit easy against Khabib.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Earlier today I was rewatching those highlights from that Hooker fight, and I think it was Dominic Cruz. I don't remember who it was, but it got to the end of a certain round, and they're both just covered in blood and sweat. And he's like, "That was a fantastic round if you don't care for defense." And it was just like, yeah, I mean, they were just slugging it out, and that's one of the things too. That's Brian was mentioning how. Poirier, on some level, even though an emotional, angry aggression has cost him in the past, it's also kind of at the center of the fighter that he is, it seems, in a way. Because when you see him fighting Gaethje, when you see him fighting Hooker, he's fighting guys. I mean, it says a lot that Gaethje didn't knock him the fuck out, but nonetheless, you see him, fighting in that way. You just see him backing him up against the fence, and he's just heaving hooks at him, and it just doesn't, and just, one after another, and it's like, how much of that can you put against somebody like McGregor and not get knocked out? You know what I mean? But and like you say, he's proven his chin. I think 155 makes a difference for him as well. It's one thing to get nicked behind the ear and go down when you're half starved. It's another thing to be, one of the things that every interview I see with Poirier right now, he always mentions the fact that he just feels so comfortable at 155 because it's easy. You know what I mean? He doesn't have to do it. He probably has to lose, 12 pounds or something, and it's not a big deal for somebody who is used to losing 25.
Yeah, you always look back at that Michael Johnson loss, though. Like, it seemed weird at the time, but it still happened, and you can't.
And that was lightweight, right?
That was lightweight. Yeah, he was on this run, and we were talking about a title shot back then.
Good point.
Then he got cracked with that massive shot from Johnson. I think that's how Johnson got the Khabib fight as well. And then, that's when he had to really go back down the ladder and climb up and fight all these absolute killers again. And I suppose it was from that loss. I think he's a better fighter because of that loss. But, it just shows that he can get caught, and he can get caught at lightweight as well.
Mm-hmm. How do you just go, okay, I'm just going to circle really fast for 2 rounds? Like, it just seems like you're not going to live trying to be on the outside, I don't think, and trying to like everybody's trying to sort of contain what this force is, and either you have to just get completely absurdly away from it, or go at it so directly that it's nullified. But there's all this middle ground, I think, that people play in, at least from my sort of ignorant observation. It seems like get in or get the F out, but like all this kind of like, I'm going to try to like lead the dance, or I don't know. I don't see how that works out for Poirier. But one of the things I like when you talk about like what kind of chin he's got, or, when we say chin, we mean like how much cerebral fascia is still connected to anything. So let's be, right. But to especially somebody that doesn't understand fighting, or has not watched a lot of fights, the sort of highlight for McGregor beating Poirier years ago, it's strangely like unremarkable for a McGregor highlight. Like visually, it's sort of like, wait, it was kind of like a top of the head, like I don't know, like it wasn't like this sort of it wasn't Overeem getting his chin sent into the rafters or anything. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't anything like that. So I find that interesting in the sense that it's almost like there's not been a visual poetry assigned to this matchup yet, because it just was sort of like this kind of hit and miss. But I wonder if, ultimately my questions are like, what are your thoughts on Poirier? Sort of, is he going to be able to sort of just not strategize himself to death and be who he is, or is he going to try to employ something that is so outside of his realm to try to survive this anomaly of McGregor in the first couple of rounds, that it actually is either wildly effective some weird way? Like, it just seems like he's got to do his thing and that's all he can do, but it doesn't seem like a good matchup ultimately.
I know what you mean. Like, I think that while he has to do his thing, I think he needs to be tactically sound as well. Like you don't want to mess with McGregor. You don't get into a firefight in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Because like we seen him, like we saw in the first fight what happened in the first round there, and we seen him against Aldo, all these other fighters.
Yeah.
He's at his best in those first like 10 minutes. So, and there's also these huge question marks over McGregor's cardio after that. Like we've seen in like certain fights, like the Diaz fights, where he like, especially the first Diaz fight when he got knocked down and then choked out. But and then the second fight, we saw him like when Diaz came back towards the middle point of the fight, and he did come back again. But you know, like there's still these little doubts. And the Mayweather fight again, the cardio came into play there like in a big way. I know it's a different sport, different timing, everything, but you know, it doesn't feel like we've got answers to that question over his cardio yet. Because in the Cerrone fight was so short. Cerrone, I've never seen a fight like that where someone of Cerrone's stature just didn't land anything and just got shouldered in the face for a while until
it does feel like people just shrink really quickly mentally, and it just is something that nobody thinks is going to happen to them, and then it's happening, and then they can't believe it's happening, and then it's over, and it's this strange sort of meltdown that you've kind of seen a lot of different people have against him. One of the things that I was like fascinated by too was, you know, McGregor being so interested in, like, he's actually kind of let down that his fight is not going to be in an empty arena, because he was so sort of pining for the acoustics of his punches ringing out in this empty arena. He really wanted, you know, and I really appreciated that, because it gives you a sense of like what a sort of observational artist that he really is with what he's doing. He's thinking about the performance. He's thinking about the sensory aspects of it. Like he's not just thinking about like, what am I going to do to win? He's really decorating the whole house of the experience. It's really fascinating. What do you have any like insights or thoughts on sort of that part of it? I guess there's going to be some crowd there now, so he doesn't get to quite do that. But in terms of just how does it relate in terms of, you know, McGregor being such a sort of this kind of omniforce, right? He's just working on so many levels at once, whereas Poirier is perhaps maybe a little bit more linear in his pursuits.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that like having been in the same room as McGregor and being at press conferences, been at media days with him, he really thinks about everything all the time. When he's just sitting there, he's not just sitting there. You know, when he's at a press conference, he's not just at a press conference. He's planning
not vaping.
ahead.
He's not vaping like Joe right now. Joe, are you vaping? What are you doing over there?
Yes, I'm vaping.
Okay. God, I think it's like
I'm thinking about my audience while I vape.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, you look like you know, like you're nursing good times. Anyway, sorry, Ben. I'm sorry, man. But you were saying
a brief vape interlude is always welcome. He's always thinking about everything, McGregor. He's like he's so, you know, he's in the moment, and he's in the next moment, and he's in the last moment. He's in every moment. Whereas I feel like Poirier sometimes in the big moments he does freeze up and he doesn't perform to his best. Like the Johnson fight, the first McGregor fight, the Khabib fight, arguably, although like who can beat Khabib?
Yeah.
But again, like that's the real question about Poirier, is that we've seen him come through these wars, but a McGregor fight is a bit different. It's that next level up in terms of a big spectacle, a big showcase. And that's the big one. Khabib's the big one, and he failed that test. Can he pass the second McGregor test? That's what we're going to get the answer to on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, and I especially, you know, I'm hoping that sort of the am I good, Brian?
Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm seeing little things pop up. I'm seeing my ideal version of this fight would be that the best ever Dustin Poirier shows up, and Conor has a bit of rust, and we get to that end of that second round, the beginning of that third round, and then we really see what's going on with these two people. You know what I mean? But I would also be, you know, I mean, if I see another Eddie Alvarez fight, that would be fucking unbelievable. You know what I mean? That to me, that's the Conor that I'm trying to find again, is that guy who, kind of to what Brian was just talking about and what you were just saying about him, it's that guy who, you know, not only is he technically, I mean, even technically, that shit was on another level that night. You know what I mean? Like seeing those highlights again this week, it's just like those combinations were insane. Like, and just the pinpoint accuracy, and just like, I'm gonna knock your head and it's gonna go 2 feet that way, and then I'm right there, and then boom, the timing is just, it's insane. And it's on the biggest stage possible, and he makes it look fucking easy and beautiful. I mean, unbelievable what he's been able to do. And I mean, I haven't seen Poirier be able to do something like that. I don't know if Poirier can do that because it's just not it's not really his thing. You know, there's a bit of an Ali Frazier thing happening here with these two to some degree. You know, I think Poirier's got, you know, a lot of technical skill of his own, but the packaging is more meat and potatoes compared to what Conor does in terms of this flowing sort of artistry that he brings to his game, which of course I love. You know what I mean? That's the best thing. And to see him bring all of those tools and then also bring that composure, that would be incredible, you know, and it'd especially be incredible after, you know, all this time away, because again, you know, that Cerrone fight, I mean, what is that? You know what I mean? There wasn't much to it. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to gauge. Huh?
I was just saying, easy for us to say, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you could argue that was everything to it. That's why I was only in there for 37 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever it was.
It is one of those things where you
really. By the way, really quick, I just wanted to say this. I looked it up. The first Poirier fight was in 2014. So it's, you know, 6-7 years ago. It'll be 7 years in September.
With a long road ahead of even before that as well, right? Like well documented. Yeah. So so for you, Joe, you're let's just say you're fighting Conor McGregor. All right.
Best of luck.
You better watch out.
Like, I've always thought about this, right? Like remember, I don't know if you remember this, Joe, but I was talking about like how I think every football team, American football, every American football team should have one person that has virtually no football experience whatsoever that they put only in the game when they need a kickoff return for a touchdown to win the game in the Super Bowl. Like that's the only time you would ever do that, because the person will be on such fight or flight. I'm going to die. Like their hamstrings will just be flying off. Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? Like the same kind of stuff that like moms will lift a car to save a baby stuff, right? Like you just save it, right? To like I'm not putting you you don't practice, you don't play. I'm just the only time you're ever going to go in is the Super Bowl last second to run a kickoff back all the way. So I think of it the same way with like, okay, Joe, you are subbing for Poirier last minute.
Okay.
The Magic Commission granted you we deleted all the evidence of you vaping on the internet,
Rocky Balboa style. They're giving me the American dream all of a sudden,
and then so then
Conor McGregor on Thanksgiving Day,
like as a common man with some martial arts experience for sure, but with maybe not the requisite amount. What would be your strategy?
Oh my,
you're fighting for your life.
I'm
on
TV. My life. What would I do?
It's not a game. This is not a game, Joe.
This is not the game. Man.
You got to visualize first. That's important. That's good. That's good. You're visualizing.
I'm going to do some primal movement.
Get Ido Portal in.
I'm going to be doing some Ido Portal. I'm going to be doing like some lizard crawls. I'm going to like punch out a candle. That was my favorite Conor McGregor, by the way. I loved like weird mystic Mac Conor McGregor with Ido Portal. That shit was gold.
It was great because everyone just thought it was a joke initially, and then he goes and beats Aldo in like 13 seconds, and everyone's going like, "Whoa, maybe there's something to this moving like a snake."
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, a lot of that stuff. I mean, just on the idea that doing functional movement exercises is good for a martial artist. Yeah, of course it is.
Good for anybody.
Yeah, I think it's. I love that that aspect of his game. Just the. Just constantly creatively learning, if he's still doing that. See, it's weird now because we used to see that Conor all the time, and now he's sort of, in a box, you know, of celebrity, and you can't see through it. You just get whatever he shows you, but you're not sure if it's real. You know what I mean? So
who do you want? Who do you guys want to win? Like, what do you think is the best scenario for whatever your interests are? If it's the perpetuation of more interesting matchups, or for the glory of one person, or whatever. Like, who do you want to win, and why?
Go ahead, Ben.
Well, objectively speaking, the good guy in this equation is Dustin Poirier. Like, there's no two ways about it. He's got the good fight foundation. He doesn't punch old men in bars or throw dollies at buses.
Yeah.
He's the good guy. I would like to see him get that McGregor rub. I think that would be amazing. Like, he's kind of humble. You saw it at the press conference. Like, he was almost uncomfortable up there, but at the same time, he feels like, you feel like whenever he does a media obligation, he's doing it in a way to benefit his own charity as well as, and even his own fight career. It's a platform for him to do better for the world. And I like, it's hard not to get behind someone like that.
I know. It's so
But
virtuous.
at the same time, Conor McGregor, like, Conor McGregor at his best, like, is spectacular to watch. Like, as you said, he gets into that flow state where it's like he's in the matrix and you don't know how he's doing it. And it's almost like he's playing a video game and he's got the cheat codes. And he's, you know, the other person just cannot land anything on him. And who wouldn't want to see that? So I'm in between two minds. I just want to see a good fight. May the best man win.
Yeah,
I'm right there with you. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, it's very much like how, you know, growing up watching Michael Jordan dominate basketball for all of those years from college on, you know, and I always rooted against him. Always. Because I just wanted somebody else to win, you know, or whatever. And, but it's been great now retroactively to go back and watch, you know, to be able to appreciate all that without the sort of feeling of like, I'm on a side here, or I just want the, you know, how people feel about Tom Brady or these certain perennial winners. They just get to a point where it's like, I don't care. I just want whoever's fighting them to just win, you know. But I do appreciate like the you know, and by the way, Conor, you know, helps people too. I don't know if it's court issued or not, but I'm just saying, you know, he's got foundations, he's got things, he's matching offers, he's, you know, he's got the PR thing going too, you know. So I mean, I guess, but it is hard to root against the guy that's purely altruistically just like turning the corner on his career and really getting into that phase of life where you realize I'm in a place to do something, give back, all that. You know, it's hard not to root for Poirier.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I pretty much agree with you guys both. I mean, you know, the person who wants to see a fair, just world wants Dustin Poirier to win the fight, and the person who, you know, is a fan of martial arts would love to see Conor like better than ever. You know what I mean? I would love it, you know, because that's, I mean, to me, that's the other disappointing thing with Conor is just the fact that he has done so many other things. Which I respect also, by the way. I mean, as somebody who, you know, is bored by doing any one thing, I totally get it. And I see why, especially somebody like him, you know, wants to try, you know, to see, you know, well, what if I did this? Could I do that? Could I fight and could I be a boxer? You know, can I fight Manny Pacquiao? Can I launch a successful whiskey brand? You know, I don't begrudge him trying any of those things, but the fact that we've seen less and less of him in the octagon and have it's been a long time since we've seen him like at his best in the octagon, you know what I mean? So it'd be great to see him like rededicated, refocused, and ready to go, because if we actually do get this sort of tournament, you know, however they actually define that, you know, for anybody who's, you know, doesn't follow the fights or is not, you know, hasn't been tuned in every day all week this week, they're basically the lightweight division is getting ready to prime up to fill an empty slot in the championship seat. So so this fight and the fight below it, Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler, this is all sort of, you know, pointing in that direction. So what about Dan Hooker and Michael Chandler? Do you have any thoughts about that fight? Michael Chandler lives here in Nashville now, so he's sort of our local MMA connection, and it's been really exciting to see him get into the UFC.
Big fan of Michael Chandler. Again, one of the good guys. He's a good dude. But it's a real tough one for him because Dan Hooker is so proven in the UFC. And while like Chandler has fought like, you know, Alvarez and Benson Henderson more recently, Benson Henderson was kind of on the downward slide. Alvarez was arguably before he reached his peak. The UFC is on a different level, I think, especially now. So I don't know. I keep getting reminded
division too. That division's like one of the fucking fiery divisions, you know.
That's the thing. Like I just keep getting visions back of Eddie Alvarez's debut when they threw him in against Cerrone. I'm like, it was a bit too much too soon. But I don't know. I don't know. I think that I've got a feeling about Chandler. I think he's in a good place right now. And that win over Henderson like gave him a lot of confidence. And even you saw how comfortable he was up there at the press conference today. It feels like it's prime for him to get the win and to announce himself. And if he gets a win against someone like Hooker, I think you're talking title shot next.
I think, one of the things that's interesting is I think with Hooker, you've got, Hooker is incredibly technical. And I think that somebody like Chandler is Hooker is very technical. Hooker is also very tall and very lean, long-limbed. Chandler is comparatively short and stout and is, technical in his own ways, but is really one of these fighters who aggressively charges forward and takes you apart. You know what I mean? And so there's a part of me that thinks, Chandler's used to being the guy who's looking up at the other guy. You know what I mean? Chandler knows how to deal with that. And I don't know if Hooker's style can necessarily handle a bull charging at him. You know what I mean? And I think there's a hesitating thing to what Hooker does. And it's almost like Hooker would need to deploy those weapons first to keep Michael Chandler at bay. And I almost think he's much more interested in sort of countering. And it's like, you can't counter Michael Chandler because now he's on your chest. You're eating his fucking fist. You know what I mean? So does that make sense? Am I making any good analysis there?
Sounds good to me. I will say though, like never underestimate the power of city kickboxing. Those guys are doing some very interesting stuff. And I would be shocked if they don't have an amazing game plan for Michael Chandler. That seems like the exact type of fighter they would prepare for well.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, I was gonna say that's a fantastic point because that's really there's actually because it's so late for him, not late, but later obviously in his career to get to the UFC and debut like this in this under these circumstances and everything, pretty wild. But I mean, it really is this. It's easy to miss that this actually is a bit of sort of a modernity in coaching and philosophy versus sort of there's a little bit of a tortoise in the hare kind of a thing going on, or something past versus future thing going on because of what you're talking about in terms of, city kickboxing and, there's just strange, weird shit happening where you're seeing evolution of normally tried and true methodologies that are starting to get upended or disrupted or canceled out entirely. And it's because of this new vocabulary. And so we're going to find out whether, Chandler is sort of existing on the sort of train that he's been on and evolving in a sort of normal way, or if he's got like maybe some really new theoretical sort of or philosophical or tactical wrinkles that are because he's finally arrived at this stage and he's feeling like he can really unleash that in whatever way. I don't know. Like, I feel like he's probably in a way fighting more to win now more than he probably has in a long time. I would imagine for him, a lot of fights have been fighting not to lose because he's been, let's just say, fighting lesser competition or whatever. The stakes are not as high. Now they are.
We've seen him lose against lesser fighters than Dan Hooker. Remember the Will Brooks fights? Like,
yeah,
him.
Yeah, there's, for sure.
There's things like that too, though, where when I grew up playing soccer, we were the worst team every year for this. Like, I played on the city team, and we were awful. We would finish like 1-15 every year, and so we would get on these bus rides, go 3 hours to play whatever team. They would just mop the floor with us, and then it was like routine. I did this for years. Just got murdered in soccer for every game, every season. but we would get occasionally these sneaky wins against, and whenever we would, it would always be against the best team or the second best team, because people will play to the level of competition or overlook or whatever. And there really is something to that. And if you give somebody like that's not been, not as successful a chance, an opening, they're going to take it, without hesitation. So maybe there's some of that that's happened in the past where he got a little complacent, but it is strange, right? It is strange that it's a different context now.
For sure. Also, I feel like the Bellator, like some of those fighters are really underrated. I think Pitbull could be like the best featherweight in the world right now. He's up there. It's between, but featherweight. I know we're talking about lightweight this week, but featherweight is like amazingly good at the moment. And I think Pitbull is in the conversation of best in the world with the likes of Holloway and Volkanovski and possibly Brian Ortega. But
I would love to see like Pitbull have a chance to get in with all those guys and like let's see who's the best out of those guys, like a little cross promotion.
It would never happen. I think
I know.
He's gonna have to come over and sign for the UFC, but I would kill for that to happen. Who can I kill to make that happen?
That's hilarious.
I wonder if things like that will be on the table in the future, whenever that is, when Dana White is not at the lead of the UFC. I wonder if maybe there's a more potential for interesting things like that to happen in the next era.
I don't know if there will be a next era anytime soon. I think Dana White's going to be one of these guys who's going to be promoting the UFC when he's 95 years old. Like, I think he's that kind of guy. Like,
yeah. He's just never going to go away.
Yeah.
No, he'll be ringside in his wheelchair with his oxygen mask on, just like giving pain fighters pennies.
I know, it's so crazy how like they did counter programming against the inauguration here. Yeah.
Was that? I've heard that being said. Is that really? Do you think they did that deliberately?
100%. I have no evidence for what I'm saying at all. But I'm telling you, 100% that's what it was. Because I mean, you have all this flexibility, all this time. You're going to be looking, if you're programming, and you're scheduling, you're going to be thinking about what else is going on and what you're going to make room for or what you're not. And it's clear where those alliances are. And I don't know, man. Like that was it's getting weird in that way. It's with the whole pandemic and everything else. It's been a little strange. I'll just leave it at that.
Understatement of the year.
Hey Ben, so thank you for coming on with us. We really appreciate you being here. What's the best way for our listeners to find you and follow all the things you're doing?
Yeah, sure. You can follow me on Twitter at the Jive Master. My podcast, Hindfight MMA. We're on Spotify. We're also on Twitter at Hindfight MMA. I do some freelance stuff as well. I do some WWE interviews for Sports Kita, and then I also have some up on the Sports Daily. I occasionally do MMA interviews and MMA stuff there.
Yeah, right on, dude. Well, I'm so glad to talk to you. I really wanted to get, the Irish perspective on this fight because it's, so outside of some of the Brazilian fighters, I really feels like, the Irish fight fans, are the ones who are, really get riled up for these SBG guys. And obviously, in terms of, the entire MMA world, nobody draws attention like Conor. So I wanted to get you on here and give you a chance to tell us your insights. And yeah, I think we're all pretty much in agreement now. I mean, it just comes down to getting to see the fight on Saturday night. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'll be tweeting with you then, and we'll see what happens.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. And by the way, just so you know, like those tweets have an actual direct outcome on what is happening. Don't feel like that you're just talking to the void. You can actually affect the outcome of fights based on what you're saying
listening to your tweets.
Twitter. So always remember that. Yeah, thanks a lot, man. We will talk to you again very soon, and we'd love to learn more also just about what your journey has been in your craft up to this point, and maybe steal some of your techniques.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, exactly. All right, take care.
Enjoy the fights, guys.
Yeah, man. We'll pull you off here, and then Joe, we'll hang on and then wrap it up. All right. See you later.
Sounds good. Bye, Ben. Thanks, brother.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so that was fun. I think that worked out great. It makes me think that we've had a number of guests on it once before in a more casual setting. We had like 6 or 7 people on when we did our 100th episode, which was more of just like us drinking.
Yeah, I have that sometimes.
Yeah, but to do multiple interviews with a couple of these guys and really get an insight into what the MMA journalism world in Ireland is thinking about this fight, that was really fun.
Absolutely, yeah. I love also just the taking advantage of the opportunity to get the Irish perspective direct from the source, from good sources too. So that's how you really. It's a special one, man. I really appreciate everybody making that happen. Do you have anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Of maybe things that you're doing?
I don't really think I do right now. I don't. I found out that I got in a new exhibit this week, but they haven't really made an announcement yet, so I'll wait for that to come out and I'll let people know about it. That's about it. I've been doing just kind of plugging away. I took my saxophone in to the shop today, Brian. I dropped it off at my buddy's house to get some new pads. Going to get a little cleaning. It's going to be wonderful.
Did I know you play saxophone?
That's my first instrument. I've been playing that since I was like 10.
I was just well, you don't even need a saxophone. No, was just revisiting the Coltrane changes today, and sort of Vox Media makes these great sort of pieces on kind of different music tidbits that are really interesting to music nerds that typically don't get explained out to people that are not total music nerds, but they have a little, like they did one on how gated reverb sort of accidentally happened in the 80s and became the staple of sort of 80s drum sounds, or a lot of sounds. And then they just did one where it was all about the they have one that's all about the giant steps and the Coltrane changes and the circle of fifths and all that. And for somebody that yeah. Well, just what I love is that they've but just the idea that the piano player in that tune is hanging on for dear life and has never encountered anything so outlandish on a chart in his entire life, and what they documented and what they released, like that recording, you're hearing a piano player holding on for dear life. go back and listen to Giant Steps and just pay attention to the piano solo. It's because the tempo is so fast and the keys are changing so fast, and the method of that piece is it's probably like trying to do algebra while you're on DMT or something. Like you're dealing with different constructs all happening at the same time.
Yeah, that album's incredible.
Yeah. So that's cool. I don't know why I didn't know you played saxophone. So now we'll have to talk about that. But
I'll make you a beat. I'll make you a beat with some sweet fucking licks on it.
Hit me. Yeah. I mean, hey man, I've got some things we can talk about it. But yeah. And so for me, I just released 2 EPs. Double is sort of like a pairing of EP releases. So you can go to thosedrones.com and in a couple days, and you'll see all the info about that. But it's happening; those things are out there, and I'm excited about that.
Are you gonna how are you gonna release them, Brian?
Just digitally with a few cassettes. Also
from your website or from a platform or some kind.
So it's already on iTunes. It's already on a lot of the places. I'm just waiting for all of those digital syncs to kind of catch up before I
do the release.
Yeah, I've already mentioned it on the interwebs, but I'll do a consolidated, thoughtful explanation of what the hell I'm doing and why I did it, and maybe why someone.
And how are you going to sell? You can just sell cassettes via your website.
Yeah. I'm just gonna make a very limited edition, like 10 cassettes. It's really important, I think, to have an artifact, right? Even though
are you like doing your own duplication, or do you have somebody doing that?
Yeah, it's just 10. It's just 10. So like I've got this. You can't see it just off camera over here, but I have this amazing from the late 70s. It's a cassette deck. It's called a Tandberg TCD 330. And it is crazy. It's like this vertical thing with rosewood side panels. It sits on these pedestals. It's got the analog VUs.
Yeah. I've seen this at your house.
Yeah. So the cool thing about that is that you can monitor off of the record head. So what this means for people that don't know what the hell I'm talking about, if you remember making tapes at all, is that, you know, when you made a tape, it was always a mystery. Like, I hope this came out okay, right? Like, I hope my tape deck isn't screwed up. I hope this tape is not screwing up. You record it and then you listen back and you don't know if the levels are 100% right because you're trying to trust the meters, but it could go a little louder. It sounds a little noisy, you know, all that kind of stuff. Well, this one, it has you can monitor off of the tape record. You know, there's a playhead. It's a 3-head tape deck, so you can monitor just after the record head. So what that means is that I can feed sound into it that I want to record, and then whatever's coming back, I'm actually listening to what is being printed on the tape at the time by just a couple milliseconds delay, of course. But what that allows me to do is like really control, and I also can control what they call the azimuth, where you can like slide the record head back and forth to maximize like the surface of the record head and the tape going across it. You want to have it be lined up as perfectly as possible, and it can vary a little bit based on cassette. So if you want to nerd out on cassette sometimes,
is that varying your saturation, Brian?
Yes, it is. It is. It's kind of like, you know, painting with a roller versus painting with a brush. You want to just make sure you're filling as much space as you can there. So anyway, so I don't want to do like a big cassette run. I just want, you know, since I have the ability to do it, I'm going to take some photographs, print some photographs, and just make those the tape covers, and just have like a few, you know, there's certain people that I think really always want to have whatever it is that I made, and I'm really grateful for that. But I just have but I want to be able to give sort of those folks something that's tangible goods on some level. So it'll be digital everywhere, but I mean, ultimately it's 2 EPs because it's just music that I've just been making, and it's whatever it is. I'm not trying to do like a concept album right now. So it's got a lot of just like beats and kind of sketches, and some things that are way more finished out. Other things that I just kind of thought were good left where they were. Something, you know, it's kind of like looking through a thing where some things are going to be full color. Some are just going to be charcoal outlines. Some are going to be napkin drawings. Some are going to be, you know, full bore prints or whatever. You know, it's going to be an array of things.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically it's all about just like anybody else, right? Keep doing what you're doing and keep output, you know, going. I cannot stand having finished work that is sitting around anywhere. It makes me crazy. So I am always like just trying to get stuff out of the way so I can start anew on the next thing, you know, whatever my next breath of stuff is going to be. So it's been cool to release that. And it's been stuff that I've been doing over the last few months. Everybody's got their like, I don't know what to do with this pandemic stuff. And by the way, side note, for any musicians that are listening, if you need a mastering guy, go to badandymastering.com. My friend Andy Alexander mastered my stuff, and you know, we go way back. So I mean, if you need to get a music project done and somebody that really understands how weird we all are and is one of us, but can also really do the clinical job, but with the sort of a soulful outlook on mastering, I would say go to badandymastering.com. So that's my plug for my buddy Andy's mastering business. But anyway, yeah, man. So it just feels good to get stuff out, whatever, you know, just keep going, keep pressing. And I'm already thinking about the next thing, and the next thing is how it goes, you know?
Yeah, that's rad, man. Well, next week I don't actually have anybody planned, so maybe we'll do just a sort of a
oh no. Next week we'll talk about that, but we have next week.
Did you book that guest?
Yeah, that's been done. Yeah.
Oh, do you want to talk about it?
No, we're gonna. It's such a strange, awesome curveball that I kind of don't even really want to get into it yet, because it's just
everybody tune in next week for this strange, awesome curveball we're about to throw your way.
Yeah.
Enjoy the weekend. Have a great fight night on Saturday, and go Michael Chandler. And we'll see you guys all in about a week.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Make sure that you follow and subscribe and click all the buttons and all the things. Again, we're really trying to get our audio audience to be maybe a little bit more into the video side of things. We're going to keep doing it though, either way. But yeah, just make sure you press buttons that help us, and then we will appreciate it. So anyway, all right, Joe, we'll see you on the other side.
All righty. Take it easy, everybody.